Hello, welcome to another episode of Sexpertise. I'm your host and favorite sexpert, the Erica Rivera. Before I get into today's topic, I just want to give a quick shout out to Tiana Renee Beauty, who provided makeup for this episode, because honestly, I could never. But she did a wonderful job. But again, my name is Erica, and today we're diving into one of the most exciting and often misunderstood topics in relationships, and that's kink and fetishes. So I'm actually pretty excited about today's episode because this episode is all about exploring the spice of life, what makes us curious, what excites us, and how we can embrace those desires without shame. Whether you're completely new to this topic, exploring on your own, or looking to deepen your connection with a partner, this episode has a little something something for everyone. Now, kink and fetishes often carry a stigma, unfortunately, but they're a very important part of human sexuality. They allow us to express ourselves in creative, meaningful, and very intimate ways. Over the next 20 to 30 minutes, we'll break down what kinks and fetishes are, tackle the myths that surround them, and explore how to introduce these conversations into your relationships. Let's jump in and celebrate the spice that makes our connections even more flavorful. All right, so what are kinks and fetishes? Let's start by defining what we mean by kink and what we mean by fetish. So a kink is going to refer to unconventional sexual preferences or activities. These might include role playing, sensory play, or power dynamics, basically anything outside of the traditional vanilla experiences. A fetish, on the other hand, is more specific. It's when sexual arousal is tied to a particular object, body part, or scenario. For example, fetishes might involve latex, feet, or even leather. What's important to understand is both kinks and fetishes are completely normal. They're just another facet of human sexuality, and they show how diverse and unique our desires can be. If you've ever felt curious about exploring something that excites you but doesn't fit into traditional ideas about sex, you're not alone. Embracing your interests is a powerful way to connect with yourself and, if you choose, with a partner. Some people may have subtle kinks, like enjoying a little light spanking or playful restraint, while others may have more elaborate fantasies. Either way, there's no hierarchy here. What matters is that your interests bring you joy and align with your personal boundaries. That is what's most important. Remember, kink and fetishes are as varied as the people who enjoy them. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, kink and fetishes often come with a heavy, heavy dose of stigma. Society tends to label anything, literally anything, outside traditional sexual norms as deviant or wrong, which can lead to feelings of shame or fear of expressing these desires. This stigma is deeply rooted in outdated beliefs about sexuality, beliefs that often prioritize conformity over individual expression. But here's the truth. There is nothing wrong with exploring kinks or fetishes. In fact, Studies show that people who embrace their sexual preferences are often more satisfied and confident in their relationships. By breaking down the stigma, we create space for open and honest conversations where everyone feels safe to express themselves. It's also worth noting that kink isn't something reserved for like a particular type of person. People of all genders, orientations, and all walks of life explore kink. Whether it's a subtle preference or a central part of your sexual identity, your desires are valid. So, by normalizing kink, we can help dismantle the shame that often surrounds it and encourage healthier, more fulfilling connections. Do I even have to say it? I feel like every episode this month, I'm like, by the way. So, consent and communication. I feel like that's going to end up being a thing on this show that I'm going to be known for just because I say it so much. But if there's one thing that sets kink apart, it's the emphasis on consent and communication. These are the absolute, what have I said in the past? Cornerstones of any healthy kink dynamic, of any relationship, poly relationship. Doesn't matter what I spoke about this month. It is still the cornerstone of that relationship or dynamic. So before engaging in any activity, it's essential to have clear, open conversations with your partner about boundaries, as well as your expectations and desires. This is not a one-time thing. It is an ongoing dialogue. You know, this could turn into like a game show of sorts, an ad lib, if you will. Fill in the blank. You guys probably know what I'm going to say, usually when the communication slide comes up. So, safe words are an integral part of this process. So let's talk about that. I know I touched on safe words during, I believe, our BDSM episode a couple weeks ago, but it's also a very important process within kinks and fetishes. These pre-agreed words or signals allow participants to pause or stop an activity immediately, ensuring that everyone feels safe and respected. For example, using a traffic light system where green means keep going, yellow means slow down, and red means stop is such a simple yet effective way to maintain clear communication during scenes, rather than picking very random safe words that could be confusing in the moment. I have found that using traffic lights is probably the safest way to integrate safe words into play. Another important aspect of communication is pre-scene negotiation. So this involves discussing what you're comfortable with, what's off limits, and how you guys will care for each other afterward. We will touch base on aftercare a little bit later, but just know that that is also an important part of this dynamic. Consent is not just about saying yes one time. It's about continuously checking in and making sure that all parties are comfortable and enthusiastic throughout the experience. This level of communication is what keeps kink not only safe, but also deeply intimate and rewarding. So that was my communication spiel. You're going to always get one anytime I have a solo episode, okay? Just make sure you're communicating, please. That is the most important part. Now we're going to talk about the emotional side of kink, because there is an emotional side to kink. Kink is often seen as purely physical, but its emotional aspects are just as significant, if not more so. Engaging in kink requires a ton of vulnerability. Sharing your fantasies with a partner means opening up about a deeply personal part of yourself. So when met with trust and understanding, this vulnerability fosters a profound emotional connection. One of the ways this emotional connection is reinforced is through aftercare. I said we were going to talk about this. I feel like a lot of relationships skip this part, a lot of sexual relationships, whether you're in a serious relationship or not. I actually was talking to a client the other day who had mentioned she had never experienced aftercare before. That is not good. So for those of you that maybe are not super familiar with aftercare, maybe you've never experienced aftercare. Aftercare is the practice of reconnecting after a scene to ensure that both partners feel supported and cared for. Rather than kind of doing your thing and okay, game over, or I'm going to bed. And you're not like reconnecting after the fact, but you should. And this could involve things like cuddling, talking about the experience, maybe, just talking through it, or simply providing physical comfort like a blanket or a drink of water. All these things are considered aftercare. And aftercare isn't just nice, it's essential. It's essential. I don't think it's something that should be an afterthought. It should be it should just be part of your process because it helps both partners absorb the emotions and the intensity of the scene, ensuring that they feel secure and valued. Now, kink is also a way to explore and process deeper emotions like trust, power, and surrender. For some, it's a form of emotional release that allows them to connect with their partner on a level that goes just way beyond the physical. By embracing the emotional side of kink, we can deepen our relationships and better understand ourselves. There are many types of kinks, and in the world of kinks and fetishes, I mean, it's just so incredibly diverse. I would probably need a whole month worth of episodes probably to go through, a ton of them, but we only have today for now. So it's very diverse. I'm going to go through a couple of them in the general sense. But this really does, kinks and fetishes, because of how diverse it is, it really offers something for everyone. So let's go over a few. Physical kinks might include activities like bondage, impact play, or sensory play, where different sensations are used to heighten arousal. Now, these activities focus on the physical experience, hence physical kink. It can range from light to intense depending on your personal preferences. Now, role playing is another very popular form of kink. This might involve stepping into power dynamics like teacher and student, or exploring scenarios like medical play or cosplay. The beauty of role playing is that it allows partners to tap into their imaginations and explore new dynamics in a safe and consensual way. Now, let's get to fetishes. There are object-based fetishes, which might involve a fascination with materials like latex or leather, or a focus on specific body parts like feet. Excuse me. What's important is to remember that there's no right or wrong way to experience kink. The variety of interests shows just how creative and how unique human sexuality can be. So now we're going to switch the conversation, and I'm going to take a sip of my smoothie. Sometimes when I'm doing the show, I wonder what you guys are like drinking or doing to just kind of like relax and hear me talk about these things. Tonight, I'm drinking a banana peanut butter smoothie. I was craving it. It's what I got. So anyways, we're going to switch the conversation a little bit and talk about how you integrate this into your relationship. So discussing kink with a partner can obviously feel pretty intimidating, especially if you're worried about how they might react. No one wants to be judged. But the key is to approach the conversation with curiosity and openness. So choose a time when you're both relaxed in a private and not any under pressure type setting. So relaxed, privacy, no pressure. That's going to set the tone that can make all the difference. So, for example, you might say, I've been thinking about ways we can spice things up. Are you open to exploring something new together? It's also helpful to frame the conversation as a mutual exploration rather than a demand or expectation. And that's where I feel a lot of couples get this wrong. You might have a particular fetish or a kink that you want to explore, but you don't want to have your partner feel pressured into possibly exploring something that they're not into. I feel that when a partner in a relationship dynamic brings up a kink or a fetish that they would like to explore, they do kind of phrase it in a way where it's about them. Like I said, like a demand or an expectation, where it's often like, hey, I want to do this, and then they harbor resentment if the other person is not willing to explore that with them. So you want to make sure that you frame your conversation as if you guys are mutually exploring this together, or make them feel involved. So use phrases like, what are some things you've been curious about but haven't tried? This makes the conversation collaborative, and it creates a safe space for your partner to share their thoughts without fear of judgment as well. Now, if you feel like your partner seems hesitant or unsure, be patient. Be patient. Give them time to process the idea and provide resources like articles, videos, or books that can help them better understand your interests. The goal isn't to convince them, but to invite them into a dialogue where both of you feel respected and heard. Now, discomfort is a natural part of like any new experience, right? And kink is no exception. For many people, discussing kinks and fetishes can bring up feelings of embarrassment, feelings of rejection, or fear of rejection, or even self-consciousness. So it's super important to acknowledge that these feelings exist, and remind yourself and your partner that discomfort doesn't mean something is wrong. Make sure that you drive that point. It simply means you're stepping outside of your comfort zone, which is where growth happens. If your partner or yourself feel uncertain, start small. Start small. Exploring beginner-friendly activities can help build confidence and ease you into kink without feeling overwhelmed. For example, light sensory play or gentle bondage with scarves can be a great way to test the waters. The idea is to move at a pace that feels comfortable for both of you. And remember, communication is key. Communication is key to overcoming discomfort. If something doesn't feel right, talk about it openly and without judgment. By creating a supportive environment where both partners feel safe to express their feelings, you can really work through any initial awkwardness and focus on building that trust and connection. Safety. This is a very important part. Safety is absolutely critical when exploring kinks and fetishes. This includes both physical and emotional safety. Again, I feel like 9 times out of 10, we focus on the physical safety, not so much on the emotional safety. But especially if we're exploring kinks and fetishes that may alter like your emotions, the emotional safety has to be a thing. So physically, it's important to educate yourself on the tools and techniques that you plan to use. So, for example, if you're experimenting with bondage, ensure that you're using restraints that won't cut off circulation, and always have safety scissors, please. Always have safety scissors on hand to release your partner quickly if needed. It's not like you have an EMT in the room with you, all right? So you have to be prepared for these things. Now, emotionally, safety means creating a space where both partners feel respected and supported. This includes checking in regularly during and after a scene to ensure everyone is comfortable. I already mentioned this earlier, but one of the best ways to check in is using safe words. So using the traffic lights, yellow can signal, discomfort, or red means stop immediately. But this ensures that both of you remain in control at all times. And starting slow is another key element of safety. You don't have to dive into complex or intense scenarios right away. That's not a requirement of being into kinks and fetishes. Begin with light activities that allow you to explore boundaries and build confidence. The more that you prioritize your safety, the more enjoyable and fulfilling your kink experiences will be. Next slide, we're going to talk about self-exploration. So before you introduce kink into a relationship, it can be incredibly helpful to explore your desires on your own. Self-exploration allows you to better understand what excites you, what feels safe, and what boundaries you'd like to set. This might involve journaling about your fantasies, researching different kinks, or experimenting with beginner-friendly toys or scenarios. Self-exploration isn't just about discovering your preferences, it's also about building confidence. You'll be surprised how people just really are not confident in the bedroom or are not confident with themselves. And this type of self-exploration can help build that confidence. When you know what you want and why, it becomes so much easier to communicate your desires to a partner. For example, if you've tried sensory play on your own and you know you enjoy it, you can share that experience with your partner as a starting point for exploration because you've already done it. You've already experienced it by yourself. So you're comfortable using it as a starting point with your partner. Additionally, solo exploration helps you clarify your boundaries. Understanding what feels good and what does not feel good ensures that you can set clear limits when engaging in kink with a partner. This self-awareness not only enhances your personal growth, but also strengthens your ability to navigate kink dynamics with confidence. So kink in relationships does come with some benefits. Kink offers much more than just physical excitement. It brings emotional and relational benefits as well. Engaging in kink requires a high level of communication with which will strengthen trust and transparency between partners. Discussing boundaries, desires, and aftercare fosters a deeper understanding of each other's needs and creates a foundation of mutual respect. So, yeah, I just feel like kink can definitely, it just requires a whole nother level of transparency, really. It almost brings people together in a much stronger way. I mean, whether you're into kink or not, that may be the wrong wording, but there's just a very particular type of bond there because of the vulnerability and transparency that exists. And kink can also reignite passion in long-term relationships. So when couples step out of their routine and explore something new together, it brings a sense of novelty and adventure that keeps the connection dynamic and exciting. For example, trying a new role-playing scenario or incorporating sensory play can open doors to new forms of intimacy. So even just like trying one thing may open the door to several other kinks or fetishes that maybe you had no idea that you would be exploring. And finally, like I mentioned, kink encourages vulnerability. So sharing those desires with a partner and trusting them to honor your boundaries, it really deepens your emotional intimacy. By exploring kink together, couples often find that their connection grows stronger, both inside and outside of the bedroom. And not everything is perfect, right? No one's perfect. Nothing is perfect. So it is common for partners to have different levels of interest in kink. Like, just because I'm explaining to you how to introduce it to a partner doesn't mean that it is the end all. I took Erica's advice and everything is great and we're going to explore this kink together. No. So it's common for partners to have different levels of interest in kink. And navigating these differences, it requires empathy and compromise. So yes, I told you how you can properly introduce it to a relationship, but there's going to be differences. How do we handle that? If one partner is excited about exploring bondage, but the other one is hesitant, start by discussing what aspects of bondage feel intimidating and what might feel more approachable. Tools like the yes, no, maybe list can be incredibly helpful in finding common ground. This list allows partners to outline what they're unsure about and what they're open to trying and what's off limits. By focusing on areas of overlap, couples can create a shared experience that feels exciting and safe for both partners. And above all, respect is key. Never, never pressure a partner to engage in something they're uncomfortable with. Instead, focus on building trust and finding ways to explore intimacy that honor both partners' boundaries. Over time, this approach is what creates a stronger and more fulfilling dynamic. And remember, these things are ever evolving. They may not be interested now, they might be interested later. You may not be interested in something now, you might be interested later. So it is evolving and it's an ongoing conversation. Boundaries, communication, everything is an ongoing conversation. So let's talk about some myths. There are many myths about kink that can create unnecessary fear or misunderstanding. One common misconception is that kink is always about sex. In reality, no. Kink is often more about connection, trust, and emotional exploration than physical acts, believe it or not. So, for example, a power exchange dynamic might involve acts of service or verbal affirmations rather than anything overtly sexual. The more you know. Another myth is that kink is dangerous or abusive. No. In fact, consensual kink is one of the safest ways to explore intimacy because of its emphasis on boundaries and communication. Therefore, not making it abusive. Abuse, by definition, involves coercion and a lack of consent. Kink, on the other hand, is rooted in mutual respect and agreement. So, by challenging these myths, we can create a more inclusive and accurate understanding of kink. This not only helps individuals feel more confident in exploring their desires, but it also fosters greater acceptance within society as a whole. Finding a community of like-minded individuals can be incredibly empowering. And I know I mentioned that probably in the last 3 episodes, because we've talked about BDSM dynamics, polyamorous dynamics, talked about jealousy, and finding individuals that are like-minded is so important. I would recommend going to local kink meetups, which are often called munches. They provide a casual and judgment-free space to connect with others who share your same interests. These gatherings are usually held in public places like coffee shops or restaurants and are focused on building relationships rather than engaging in kink activities. Online forums and educational platforms are another very valuable resource. So websites like FetLife or Reddit has a BDSM community. They offer advice, support, and space to ask questions anonymously. And these communities can help you feel less isolated and more confident in your journey. As always, safety first though. With websites, dating apps, really anything online, use your best judgment. But FetLife, Reddit, things like that still have pretty good groups where you can have these discussions. And when engaging with a kink community, it's so important to respect other people's privacy and boundaries. Many people value the ability to stay anonymous. So always ask before sharing personal information or photos. By approaching these spaces with respect and curiosity, you can build a network of support that enhances your exploration. All right, so as we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with one key takeaway. Kink and fetishes are about more than just excitement. They're about connection, trust, and self-expression. By embracing your desires and exploring them openly, you create opportunities for deeper intimacy and understanding in your relationships. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the spice of life. Whether you're taking your first steps into kink or deepening your existing relationship and your existing exploration, remember that there's no right or wrong way to approach this. It's all about what feels right for you and your partner. All right. And as always, contact information is on the screen. Please make sure to subscribe to my Patreon if you want to have a deeper conversation on what we spoke about on this episode. I provide newsletters. I provide calls with me and monthly lives with my subscribers. That's where we really get to talk about these episodes and these topics on a much deeper level. So that's at the Erica Rivera on all platforms. It's also the Erica Rivera on Patreon and email, address, all the things. So please stay in touch, stay curious, stay open, and keep celebrating the unique and beautiful aspects of your sexuality. I will see you next time on Sexpertise.